So hello, everybody. Welcome to this conference about Lyme disease, what everybody should know. I am so glad that you are here because you will be gaining a lot of information that are currently um, difficult to get or unavailable. So I'll be downloading a lot of information on you, but you will have access to this recording and you can share with everybody because everybody should know about these things. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine Gagnon. I'm a health and life coach. I'm also a Lyme survivor and Lyme expert. I have a master's degree as a nurse practitioner. I no longer practice as a nurse practitioner, practice mainly as a health coach. And I have a certification as applied neurosciences and evolved NLP practitioner. So all big things. You'll see in the presentation how all of this applies to Lyme disease and what you're going to learn today. We're gonna go through kind of a simplified way of recognizing Lyme disease in each stages. So you're going to see a typical kind of clinical picture of someone who's affected by Lyme, depending on the different stages. So if you or anybody that you love present with those clinical signs and symptoms, you're going to be able to put on the red flags and be like, oh, it might be Lyme. And you never know how much you're going to save this person time and money and health because you've been so quick on thinking about it. Okay, we're going to talk about a few preventative measures. So I'm going to present to you my stepwise approach to how to protect yourself from getting Lyme. And we're going to look at an overview of the journey back to health, what that looks like. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will just highlight it here and I will answer them as I go or at the end of the presentation if you'd rather ask them live. Okay, so why am I talking about Lyme disease and who am I to talk about this? So I am now fully recovered from a stage 3 chronic Lyme that almost killed me in 2016. I know how to eat, how to sleep, how to move my body, what supplements to take, and how to have sustained energy and mental clarity all day. I am now doing normal activities, and it's been like that for 3 years. I've been in full recovery for the last 3 years. And it came as a result of doing intensive research. I'll tell you a little bit more about my story later, but I was working as a nurse practitioner when I got sick with Lyme disease in 2016, and I was quick to find out that the answers are not currently in the medical field for the chronic Lyme, and you'll learn what the chronic and acute, what that means. I had to invest massive amount of dollars, so I stopped counting at $75,000 what it cost me to regain my health and my life. And if I had had all the information that I have today, and a lot of which I'm sharing with you tonight, I would have saved at least 50,000 from the 75 that I had to spend. I can say now that I'm living in harmony between my mind and my body, and it's awesome, but it's not always been this way. So in 2016, I fell in the deep hole of Lyme disease hell. So for me, it started in June of 2016. I couldn't digest anything. I was having pain in my belly, nausea, bloated belly. I had a spontaneous pneumothorax. So that is a lung that collapses on itself. And I was this close to needing a chest tube inserted to reinflate the lung. I was having a lot of muscle pain, joint pain, stiffness, pain under my feet. I had a spectacular weight loss. I'm already somebody who's quite thin, and I was about 20 pounds lighter than what I am today. And I couldn't even, sit on a chair without a big cushion because I was sitting on my bones. And I mean, I was really looking horrible. I had intense fatigue and weakness. Back then, I was losing a lot of hair, so I didn't have as much hair as this. So even just holding the blow dryer, my arm was too weak to hold it for, longer than, I don't know, like 20 seconds. My vision was affected. I was no longer seeing in 3D. I was seeing in 2D. And I had a lot of eye floaters, like kind of things floating in the eyes and blurring the vision. I could not drive at night because I had a hypersensitivity to light. And also any light, any neon, like in the big stores or even in my office, it was giving me an instant headache, basically. I was searching for words. I mean, so much that it was ridiculous. Like things like a pen, right? Something really of a that you use every day. And I was searching for my words. I had zero concentration, zero memory. And I was feeling a lot of anxiety and even to the state of having some panic attacks. And let me tell you, I've been hang gliding for 15 years and I know how to manage fear. Okay. So it's not in my personality to be in a panic mode. So sometimes I was coming back from work, I was still working as a nurse practitioner, and I was having all of these almost panicking. Did I miss a diagnosis? Did I um, didn't write a prescription right? Did I forget to examine a patient? And it was just like panicking, which was really not me. I was having some skin that it was aging. Honestly, I was 36 at the time. I looked like I was 65. Nothing against people of 65 years old. It's just I look like double my age. And I was losing hair a lot as if I was in chemo. I was also having my periods every 70 days. And it was like, okay, am I in premenopause? That's impossible at age 36. You know, I was having a lot of night sweats and then some intense chills. So it was the summertime, and back home in Canada, it was like in July. And let's say it was above 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 28 Celsius. And I was having all of these chills. I had to sit outside with a blanket. um, I was feeling a lot of like depersonalization. Like if I was not myself, I'm a very enthusiastic and motivated and positive person. And yet I was very negative and down and almost like paranoiac. And it was just not me. I was snapping at people, which is not me. So this depersonalization was very distressing to me. And I was having this hypersensitivity and to light and the weight loss. So within 3 months, so this picture on the left was taken in May 2016, just before all of this happened. So within 3 months, I went from this vibrant person to like flat, nothing. And I knew that something had to change. And I was doing a lot of research, and I would go to my doctor and be like, okay, order this test, this test, this test. And she was like, all right, you're a nurse practitioner. You probably know what you're doing. But yet not much. I mean, we weren't finding much things into the blood test. My doctor was like, Catherine, maybe a little bit of anemia, maybe eat more things that have iron, but really it's stress. You're too stressed. And then I was like, okay, no. In 36 years of living in this body, I have never felt like something is eating me from the inside. And so that's when I understood that I had to follow my own intuition and roll up my sleeves, and I was on my own. And I did tons of research. Every time I would learn about a new test or some supplements, I would order it like right away because I was so desperate. And that's, in a way, that's why it cost me so much, because I did a lot of trial and error and I had nobody to guide me. Any research, anything that I would order was everything that I was finding that was evidence based, that had research, scientific research done with it. Because I'm a scientific, so I didn't want to put any just kind of quack stuff in my body. And I persevere in a way that I had never done before in my entire life. And I really discovered something that changed everything. And I was skeptical at first. I didn't know if it was going to work for me, but you know what? I had nothing to lose because this thing was killing me. And it was really a new start in my life. It was truly um, like a new life, a second life. And even before I knew it was Lyme disease, I started a treatment with powerful plants that were used for over 25 years by some natural practitioners in the US. And I literally saved my brain by doing that. You know, even though I didn't have the diagnosis yet, I just put myself in action so quickly. And I created a really amazing protocol based on natural medicinal herbs and supplements and diet, based on the research and evidence that I could find. I did not want to put conventional antibiotics in my body because, as I understood it, the more I researched, the more I understood that I had acquired this thing when I was 20 years old in Australia. So that thing had been dormant in my system for 16 years. And the more research I was doing, the more I was finding out that conventional antibiotics are not so great for chronic. They're great when it's acute, and we'll discuss more about it later. But when it's chronic, when it's been a long time, medicinal plants actually have a better profile for safety and efficacy over the long run. So I decided to not put antibiotics in my body. And in 4 months on the protocol, I regained 80% of my normal. My energy came back, my mental clarity came back, my concentration, my mood came back, my positivity came back. I was able to have a return of my muscles, because one of the things that I love doing is hang gliding, and you need some muscles to hang glide. And it was very distressing to me to think about not ever being able to hang glide anymore because I was too weak. So the return of my muscles was quite a milestone, and to be able to fly again and to get back to my normal activities. And within 8 months, I was at 90% of my normal. And I really can say now that I have found my life beyond Lyme disease, and it's been over 3 years from that. So that's where I developed a system that I called Life Over Lyme, because I thought, oh my God, if I had to do all of this work, and I'm a nurse practitioner, imagine what other people who don't necessarily have a medical background, what kind of hell they have to go through. Um, so I was like, okay, I was a health coach already, and I saw that there was a serious gap in knowledge between what we knew in the medical field about acute Lyme disease and chronic Lyme disease. And so I thought, wow, okay, everybody who's not in the medical field, who is walking around with chronic Lyme and maybe they don't know they have that, um, I want to help them save time, money, and health. And so that's where I developed the protocol that I teach, and combining that with some high level neuroscience based coaching. And I started to help people 4 years ago with Lyme disease, and that's where I saw incredible transformations and acceleration of people's healing journeys, even quicker than mine for some people who are older than me. So my goal is really that every person can save time, money, and health by knowing um, why they are sick and how to protect themselves and how to recognize the disease. Okay, and I want to help you increase your knowledge so that you can pass this information along to anybody who needs it, or to yourself if this illness was ever to present itself in your life. Okay. So today you'll walk away with how to recognize Lyme in the different phases, a stepwise approach to protect yourself and those that you love from this illness, and how to go further and get your health and mood and energy back if you or somebody you love was to get the disease. So our time is limited together. I have already built a 12-hour online course on the topic that goes way deeper, but I'm going to teach you as much as I can today, and I'll show you how you can go deeper if you want to. So why do we talk about Lyme disease? So in recent years, there's been a really rapid increase in the cases of the disease. It's a disease that is mainly transmitted by the blackleg ticks, but there are now some evidence that other ticks can also transmit the disease. When you think about a tick, so you see the kind of headpiece on the tick, they've got like two kind of mandible there. It's called a roster, and what they do is the ticks will kind of inject an anesthetic, something that you won't feel when they bite you, and so they'll insert their head into your skin to drink your blood. I know, disgusting. Um, and when you think about ticks, unfortunately, they carry several diseases with them. And because they need to have a blood meal for every stage of their evolution. And I'll show you what their stages look like. And the thing is, the ticks are carried by several vectors, including the deers, the mice, migratory birds. They can latch onto reptiles and also on domestic animals like cats, dogs, horses, cattle, and stuff like that. Um, it is the first listed disease with a direct link to global warming because we've seen more and more cases move up north as the climate is getting warmer. Lyme has 3 phases. The acute phase is within 30 days of a tick bite. That's when you want to act quickly to either consult with your doctor, but that's when you want to have a treatment with antibiotics because that's when they work the best, when it's acute. And I'll show you just in a few slides what the acute phase looks like and what the symptoms are. The second phase is the early disseminated. So the goal of this microorganism, so Lyme disease is caused mainly by the bacteria called Borrelia burgdorferi, and it's a spirochete that looks like a corkscrew, and it's a cousin of syphilis. The goal of this microorganism is to disseminate within your whole body so that it can hide itself from your immune system and reproduce in peace, and then kind of flare up and be transmitted to another host. So the early disseminated phase is phase 2. That's after 30 days of the bite until 3 months post-bite. So that's when things are starting to go everywhere in the body, and the microorganisms are replicating quite fast. And then the third phase, which is also called chronic Lyme, is the late disseminated. So that's when it's been going a little bit everywhere in the body. It's been hiding in the tissues. It's been going into the nervous system, in the brain, in the spinal cord. It's been hiding in the muscles, going into the gut membrane, into the bladder wall, hiding in the blood vessels. So it's really, and it's migrated form so that it's hiding from the immune system. And I'll show you the different forms of Borrelia in a few minutes. So why do we have to talk about this so much? It's also because, so in the acute phase, the guidelines, the medical guidelines, they change per region, but it's pretty clear that somebody needs a treatment and quick treatment in the acute phase. However, for phase 2 and 3, there are either unclear or inexistent medical guidelines. And this is where it's so important because not everybody will get the symptoms in the acute phase. So not everybody will have consulted. So they might evolve quickly to stage 2 and 3. And so because there's no guidelines or they're unclear, it's much more difficult to catch a diagnosis in these phases. Also, the tests are not very reliable. So in Canada, what we do is an ELISA test, which is a serology, which tests your antibodies. It's an indirect test. It tests whether you've been exposed and if your immune system has developed antibodies to the test. Now, if you were to test really early after a tick bite, it's possible that you're within a window that it wouldn't come up positive because the immune system hasn't had a chance to build up enough antibodies. Or if you were to test after having been sick for many years, if the immune system has been kind of tired from trying to fight so many infections, it won't be able to build enough antibodies to reach the threshold of positivity of the test. So the test could come out negative, even if the person has the disease. So that's called a false negative. So in Canada, what happens is we start with an ELISA. In the US also, but the US has a little bit more different labs than we have in Canada. So we start with an ELISA, a serology. If that one is positive, it gets sent to the microbiology lab in Winnipeg, and then they will do another serology, another ELISA, before they do what's called a Western blot, which is the test that's more specific for Lyme disease. The problem, I'll talk to you more about this, but the problem about that two-tier test is that we miss about 80% of positive cases doing it this way, okay? And so if the illness is not recognized early, well, there are some damages that can happen to the cardiac system and nervous system, lung, digestive system. It really goes everywhere. So that's why you want to catch it as early as possible. In Canada, we have pharmacists now in the guidelines. So if somebody gets bit by a tick, in the meantime of consulting with their doctor, the pharmacist can give 1 dose of antibiotics. And so what that does, it buys you time. It just kind of slows down the replication of the microorganism, and it buys you time. I'm not sure about the US if the pharmacists have the authority to do this or not. Okay. So that's why it's important to talk about it. Here's the most recent map on the CDC website in the US of the areas that are more where the illness is the most concentrated. So we find a lot of the Northeast and kind of where the Great Lakes are in the middle piece, and Florida has some concentration too. You'll sometimes hear, so sometimes I hear people who say they went to their doctor and they were suspecting Lyme, but because it was a state, let's say, you know, you're in a state like this one. I'm not very good about the geography when there's no name in the middle states, but there's no dots on this state. So a doctor could say, oh, it can't be Lyme because there's no Lyme in this state. Please be aware that it's not because Lyme has not been caught in the ticks that it doesn't exist. Okay, so the way that they do the research is they go into the forest with some kind of velvet thingies, you know, fabric, and then the ticks that attach to them, they test them and they see how many of them have Lyme and things like that. So in the Northeast, in the province of Quebec, the latest statistic is that 1 in 5 ticks, so 20% of ticks, were infected with Lyme disease. In the US, it was for quite some time, the number that was reported by the CDC was about 300,000 new cases per year. The new recent estimate in the US, and this is based on records from insurance companies, the new recent estimate is that in the US, there's approximately 476,000 new cases in the US per year. That's huge. That's huge. While in Quebec, which is just the province right above here, where you can see, I'll just come back to it. In Quebec, the latest statistic was 500 cases in 2019 and about 3,000 in the whole of Canada in 2019. So when you think about it, the maths don't really add up. If there's, let's say there's 300,000 new cases in the US per year, and you guys are about 300 million, and we have 3,000 in Canada, but we're 30 million, it would mean that there's 1,000 more cases in the US than in Canada. So it doesn't make sense. Either we have really good borders and the ticks don't come across, or the disease is underreported or under caught with the test. My hypothesis is that it's the later. So it's a huge impact. And this is kind of the map of southern Quebec, so where it would be bordering, you know, Vermont, New Hampshire, right here. Oops. Okay, so you can see that the orange are the most endemic pieces, and then the yellow is kind of a moderate risk, and then the gray is kind of gray zone. We don't know, but we probably do. Okay, so what does Lyme in the acute phase looks like? This is a classic target kind of bullseye rash that you would see in medical textbook. The problem is not everybody has that. It's about 50% of people who will have a rash like this. That means the other 50% will not have a rash. Last year, I had a friend of mine who flies paragliders at Yamaska. So we're in an endemic zone. And she had this rash on her leg and some fever. And she called me and she said, yeah, I went walking with my paraglider up to launch and I was in the forest, but I'm not sure. It doesn't really look like the bullseye. But the more she was describing this to me, the more I was like, no, this really sounds like Lyme. Go consult, go see your doctor. And in fact, it was Lyme disease, and she got treatment right away. And then that was last summer, and over the winter, her and I were doing some cross country skiing, and I asked her, and I said, "Do you still have any symptoms of this?" She says, "No, I'm fully recovered." And she said, "Thank God you had Lyme disease, Catherine." and she, and she said, "Not that I wanted you to suffer, but she says because you had it and you talked to us about it, I was more aware of what this would be like, and it kind of raised my doubts that it might be Lyme." So I was like, okay, that's why we need to talk about this some more, because it doesn't always look like this bullseye. This rash can go up to 12-inch, 30 centimeters, but it's not always like this. I used to say to people, if you've seen a tick and you have a rash and you've consulted within 72 hours and a doctor gave you appropriate treatment, go buy yourself a lottery ticket because you're really lucky. The treatment in the acute phase, the guidelines, they do vary between regions, but in the research, it's been shown that for a treatment above 21 days, up to 28 days, there is a up to 84% eradication rate. Okay, so it's not 100%. A lot of guidelines give 10 to 14 days of antibiotics. The classic antibiotics is doxycycline, 100 milligrams twice a day. It's been shown in the literature that 2 weeks is not enough. So I usually tell people to ask their doctors for 2 more weeks beyond that. So to have at least 1 month, because that's what the kind of literature is saying. But the guidelines, at least when I looked at the guidelines in Quebec, where I used to work, they have not been updated to that. The symptoms to look for in the acute phase is fever, chills, headaches, fatigue, kind of muscle, joint pain, swollen lymph nodes. It's kind of non-specific symptoms. It can look like the flu or a cold. So I usually tell people beware of the summer flu. The normal flu is influenza, which, this year with COVID, we've been seeing cases of influenza go down because there's just been less transmission. But just be aware that influenza it's not found commonly in the community during the summertime. It's really a winter disease. So when there's like a summer flu, just raise a red flag. It might be Lyme disease. Okay, that's where you want a quick consultation and make sure you get some treatment going. All righty. Everything good so far? Awesome. Thanks. How do you prevent from getting Lyme in the first place, or from reacquiring it? Because if somebody's been sick with Lyme, they've recovered. If they get bitten again, they can get it again. Okay. So I have a really stepwise approach, because this thing almost killed me in 2016. So trust me, when I go in nature, I go full armor. First of all, it's recommended walk on path and avoid high grass. So the ticks normally like to hang out on like these tall grasses and in the piles of branches and dead leaves and things like that. They don't usually go in trees. They don't fall from trees. They're really like on these grasses, like when you walk on tall grasses and it kind of just goes on your skin, and there's a tick like this ready to latch on something warm and furry, something that has blood. So you want to avoid the high grass. All right, so using tick repeller, here's what I do. DEET is, you want to have at least 30% of DEET for effective tick repelling. The problem with DEET is that it's pretty toxic. So you don't want to put it on your skin. So what I do is I put DEET, on my shoes. If I'm wearing long pants, I'm putting it on the bottom of my pants, on my socks. And if I'm wearing a long shirt, I'm putting it on the kind of on the end of the sleeve, not on my skin, but on the clothes. Be aware that some sports clothes might be damaged by DEET. So you can just put it on a small region and see if your cloth is still intact or if it's ruining it. So using the DEET on your clothing, and then I used a product called Icaridine or Picaridine 20%. It's a product that you can find anywhere in outdoors sports stores. Walmart has it. I've even seen it in pharmacies. So the name will be different. Like in Canada, I order from Mountain Equipment Co-op. It's called Care Plus. It's got 20% of Icaridine. In the US, my husband ordered this picaridine, but it's that ingredient that you want. So icaridine is almost as effective as DEET, but not nearly as toxic. So what I do is I put it on my arms and on my legs. It's okay to put it on your skin, just on skin that is thicker, not on sensitive areas, okay? So I lather that on, especially if I'm going on with a short sleeve because it's the summer and I'm really hot and I don't want to put long sleeve because I'm hot. So picaridine or icaridine 20%. And then for the very sensitive skin parts on your body, I really like to use essential oils. In the US, there's a wonderful product called Tick Ban, and it's a company named Yaya Organics. And it's two ladies that are super fun, super, upbeat and family oriented. I met them when I was an exhibitor at a conference in Maine 2 years ago on Lyme disease. And they specifically started their company to protect their kids from getting Lyme because they live in Vermont or New Hampshire, I forget where. So it's a beautiful family-owned company, Yaya Organics. In Canada, especially in Quebec, we have Zayat Aromatics, which makes essential oils. So they have this blend of essential oils called anti-tick, and you can order it online. I can send you a document with all of these names and where to order some if you want that. But basically these essential oils, I'll put it in, in my ears, because ticks, believe it or not, they can go into your ears. So I spray it in the ear or behind my ears, on my neck, on my face, in my armpit, on my groin, along my waistline. So these are very sensitive skin areas. Oh, in the navel also. And these are places that are dark and where the ticks can hide and bite you. Okay. So that's kind of my stepwise approach to preventing the tick bites. It's recommended to wear long, clear colored clothes. Why clear colored? Well, it's easier to see a tick on a white shirt than a black shirt. Closed shoes with socks and a hat if you can. Back home where we fly at the flying club, 1 year when I was talking to people about it, I was like, okay, let's start a new fashion where we put our shirt in their pants and our pants in our socks so that ticks can't get under your clothes to get to your skin. So, try to make it cool so people will want to adopt it. When you come back from the outdoors, examine your body, especially in the places, like I said, that where the ticks like to hide, armpits, neck, hair, behind your knees, waistline. And hopefully if you have somebody who can examine your back and things that are more difficult for you to see. Examine your equipment also, if you had a backpack or if you put a blanket on the ground because you had a picnic or something like that. And also your pets, cats and dogs, just examining them for ticks. It's recommended to put your clothes in the dryer for 6 minutes or to just basically just go in and wash them in hot water because some clothes can't be put in the dryer. So at least get them a good wash and then that'll roast the ticks who've been attached. because ticks can come onto your clothes, not necessarily bite you, and then they can either fall on the ground, or if you put your clothes on your bed, they will fall on the bed, and then they can wait up to, I think, 2 to 3 days for you to be in a vulnerable space, and then they can latch onto you or onto your pet. Also, if you live in a house and you have a yard, uh, try to eliminate all the dead leaves or the branches, any pile of junk or stuff that could hide the ticks, basically. Okay, so that's a stepwise approach. Here is the ticks that is the most responsible for transmitting Lyme. So you see the first one here is the larva, it's when it just came out of the egg. Normally the larva, since it didn't yet have a blood meal, is not yet contagious. But most likely the larva will attach to things that are in the woods, like a mouse or a deer or a bird or things like that. And so they can acquire already diseases. This is the nymph. And even the nymph is the size of the dot at the end of a sentence. So it's very small. And unfortunately, they can transmit diseases. And to reach each stage of its evolution, the tick needs a blood meal. So blood meal larva, blood meal nymph. And then this is the adult male and the adult female. And so you'll notice that the male has a solid abdomen, like a pumpkin seed or something like that, because the male won't need another meal. It will just copulate with the female, and it's the female who needs the most amount of blood. And you see how its abdomen is like a big bag. That's the bag that blows up, that gets really engorged after a couple of days that it's been attached to the skin. And some researchers have done some studies. They weigh a female tick before and after the blood meal, and the tick was 624 times heavier after the meal than before. So if you were to translate that into human being, it would be like a human being would go from 60 kilograms to 37 tons after one meal of blood, after 4 or 5 days. So that gives you an idea of the amount of blood that this abdomen can contain to lay out a lot of eggs. Okay. Ew. And when you think about the tick needing a blood meal for each stage of its evolution, the ticks are generally considered like the dirty needles of nature. So think about it. Before the tick bit a human, it might have bitten a mouse or a deer or a bird or a reptile. So it's like considered the dirty needle of nature. It's like we were to, we talk a lot about vaccination these days. So it's like if we were to vaccinate people with the same needle all the time. Okay, so that's why they carry a lot of diseases, not only Lyme. How to remove a tick? So there is some controversy about this. These are the two techniques that I found that have the most evidence behind them. So when the tick puts its roster in the skin, it does have some needles kind of going that way to prevent you from pulling it out. And you'll see when you try to pull out, your whole skin comes up. So if you don't have a tick puller like the picture on the right, it's recommended to have a thin tweezer, not the fat one that you would take for like eyebrow, because the fat piece could press on the abdomen of the tick, which could then regurgitate its stomach content into you and then contaminate you with Lyme, because the pathogens, the Borrelia and other diseases are really contained into the tick's stomach, and you don't want it to regurgitate into you when you pull it out. So with the thin head tweezer, you go as close as you can to the head and you pull straight up. So that's one way to remove it. If you have a tick puller like this, it kind of looks like the other end of a hammer when you pull a nail, except you wouldn't pull it like a nail, you twist it. And the reason for twisting it is that because, I talked to you about these needles up here. When you twist it, it's like it kind of twists the needles on the roaster, and then it's easier for the thing to release. Okay. Um, these are available at any veterinarian. They have these little tools. There's also some tick removal kits that you can order online. So I always have one in my backpack when I go outdoors or if I go fly, and so that if somebody has a tick, then I have the tool to remove it. It's just really useful to have with you, and it's tiny, so it doesn't take much space. Okay, so there are three main challenges that everybody that I have known and I've been in contact with who are suffering from Lyme and myself have encountered. And it's especially the stage through 2 and 3. The acute phase is pretty straightforward when the person have seen the tick or they see the bullseye and they go see their doctor. But it really gets tricky in stage 2 and 3. So we're going to explore these three main challenges. The first one is, why is the diagnosis so difficult to get during the phase 2 and 3? Second challenge is, how does Lyme disease compare to a marathon? And then where to start and persevere during the healing journey. So we're going to solve this mystery together. The challenge number one is about symptoms and diagnosis. Here's why it's so difficult to get a diagnosis in phase 2 and 3. First of all, nobody presents with the same story or the same clinical picture. Lyme is the greatest mimicker, the greatest imitator, and it will enter the person via a system for which there's already a weakness. So for example, myself, I've had what's called irritable bowel syndrome since I was 15 years old. And so when I first had Lyme come up, that's the first system that the Lyme disease attacked. So I started not being able to digest, and I was bloated, and I was, at first I was thinking, what's up with my digest system? Of course I didn't think about Lyme disease. It was digestive stuff. Somebody else could have had, let's say they've had an accident, a car accident, and they've had a whiplash. So for them, the first symptoms could be really big pain in the neck, basically, literally. And it is one of the cardinal, so the classical sign of Lyme. But for that person, it might just be really that. For somebody else, it could be headaches or dizziness, so nobody will present with the same story and the same clinical picture once it's past the acute phase. And so that's why it's so difficult for the doctor who's receiving the person, and the person is presenting with one or two problems. And so the doctor will focus on that, and so it takes quite a bit of time in order to gather the full clinical picture that I'm going to show you into the next slide. Okay. What I hear about everywhere from people who have been having some difficulty to get a diagnosis in time, and they're now in phase 2 and even 3, chronic phase, or sometimes it's been years, they say, my health is deteriorating. I go see doctors after doctors and specialists. I pass so many tests, but they don't find anything. I try so many treatments, nothing is working, and I just keep deteriorating. And now I'm being told it's in my head, and they want to prescribe antidepressants to me. So that's when I say, oh, when you got symptoms in all the symptoms in all the systems like this, and you've been trying out a lot of stuff and it's not working, think about Lyme, think about chronic Lyme too. I'm not sure, Mayumi, if you can still hear me. Your screen is frozen. It might just be your internet. Try removing your video and coming back. That might help. Hopefully it does. Another challenge, like I was telling you about earlier about the test. The testing are really difficult to get, especially in phase 2 and 3. So let's say it's been months or years that the person is sick, and they go for an ELISA. it might be that it might come out negative, and because their immune system is just too tired to reach that threshold of positivity. So sometimes what happens with people who've been sick for a long time and they want to test and they want to know, um, what I've seen a lot of practitioners do, and I've also taught this to my clients, is to treat for at least 3 months. And so it's like you give your immune system a chance to catch up, and you give it some help, and then do a test, and you have more chance of having it come back positive, and less chance of having a false negative. So like I said, the test requires almost an intact immune system to reach the threshold of positivity. So when you've been sick for a long time, it's very difficult to reach that threshold of positivity sometimes. Also, why it's difficult is some international tests are not always recognized. So I know a lot of people in Canada, they do some tests in the US, and then the doctors in Canada don't recognize the test in the US. Or some people in the US, they'll do some tests from Germany. And because the doctors don't know about these labs, they don't know if they can rely on them. They don't know how to interpret the test, so they won't recognize the test. So it's harder to make the diagnosis. And like I said, the current medical knowledge for phase 2 and 3 is limited. Uh, there's also another challenge that I know is the time that is spent with the patient. So in Canada, back home, my experience is that doctors have a limited amount of time with their patients, so they will tell them, okay, one problem only. So if the patient can only talk about one problem, but they really have this kind of plethora of things happening in all different systems of their body, it's going to be really long before the doctor can get a full clinical picture. So in order to recognize and make the diagnosis, you need to have like the global picture and all signs and symptoms, all systems addressed. Another thing that's been coming up in recent medical hypotheses is about fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. So fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndromes are now recognized as legitimate diagnoses, but there's no clear etiology, there's no clear source of these illnesses. It's good that the diagnosis is recognized, because people who suffer from these illnesses can get insurance, and they can get reimbursed, whereas before it wasn't the case. They were being told it's in their head and they get nothing. So this is great. But there are some medical hypotheses that are saying that perhaps fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome could be untreated Lyme disease, because some people who had fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome, who happened to treat for chronic Lyme, all of a sudden they saw their symptoms improve and get really better. There's a lot of overlapping. Okay. So it's just another thing to keep in mind when you know of somebody, or if you suffer from these illnesses, that it could be untreated Lyme and they could get better by treating appropriately. The symptoms, so within that same challenge of the diagnosis, the symptoms are very wide and broad across the different systems of the body. Also, so I said, Lyme will enter via a system for which there's already a weakness in the person, but also because the tick is the dirty needle of nature, Lyme, which is Borrelia burgdorfera, comes with co-infections, most of them being Babesia and Bartonella. So I'm going to go through these symptoms. You won't find this table in any medical books, because this is what I've made for myself when I was sick and I was doing a lot of research. And this expert was saying, oh, Bartonella does this, but Borrelia that, and I kind of picked up everything that all the experts were saying, and I overlapped it into this kind of table. So once you have that table, it becomes a lot easier to see that global clinical picture that happens in the phases 2 and 3. Okay, so Borrelia will present with fatigue. I mean, all of them will cause fatigue because they're really fatiguing. They exhaust the immune system, but mainly Borrelia is going to be fatigue, diffuse muscle pain similar to fibromyalgia, joint pain similar to arthritis, difficulty concentrating, brain fog, weakness, muscle weakness, and general weakness also. Tremors, so not only external tremor that you could see, but some people describe it as an internal tremor, like they feel themselves shaking inside. And of course, they say, I tell that to my doctor and nobody believes me. And I say, okay, yeah, I believe you because, you know, we know that this is part of the global picture. They'll have muscle spasms, dizziness, numbness or pins and needles, a lack of coordination and balance, and some vision disturbances and floaters in the eyes. So you remember when I was telling you about how I lost the 3D vision, I was seeing 2D and I was having some light sensitivity. That's Borrelia, who's responsible for the eye stuff. There are 3 main co-infections with Lyme. The 3 main ones are Babesia, Bartonella, and Anaplasma. I have here Babesia and Bartonella, which are the kind of the most prevalent. Borrelia is a spirochete. It's a bacteria that is a cousin of syphilis. It's a corkscrew thing. Babesia is a parasite. It's a parasite of the red blood cells, and it's a cousin to malaria. So most likely antibiotics won't touch Babesia. You need an antiparasitic to fight Babesia. So one of the hallmarks, some of the hallmark symptoms of Babesia is that difficulty concentrating, but searching for words. You know, I was like, a pen, searching for words. That's a lot of it is Babesia. A very classical sign is this air hunger. It's like the person is like, I can't get air into me. You know, they feel this shortness of breath, and some of them even go to the ER to get some treatment, but yet when they take their O2 saturation, the oxygen saturation, it's normal or close to normal, and they're like, wow, I feel like I'm suffocating. So this is a classical sign of Babesia. Another classical sign of Babesia is fever and intermittent sweats. So it's like you get fever, oftentimes it's low-grade fever, intermittent sweats, hot flashes, and then feeling frozen and chills. It's like the thermostat is dysregulated. You know, it's like the body cannot regulate its own temperature when Babesia is on board. Another cardinal sign of Babesia is POTS and palpitation. So it's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So what that means is either you change posture, you go from sitting to standing, and you have like a lot of palpitations, or your heart accelerates for a lot longer than it should, because we all have this adaptation mechanism, but it lasts longer. Or you have, let's say you're resting. I had that a lot. I was like in my bed at rest, and then all of a sudden my heart would start palpitating like really fast. Like, and I was like, wow, I'm doing nothing. What's going on? Okay, so these palpitations and sometimes irregular heartbeats, also arrhythmias, can be caused by Babesia. Babesia can cause a sense of malaise, almost like nauseated, and some insomnia, difficulty sleeping. It's weird. It's like people are saying, I'm so tired, but I can't sleep. So oftentimes the symptoms goes away when we treat Babesia. People with Babesia sometimes describe some weird headaches, like there's something crawling behind my eye, you know, and they feel like they're crazy, but that's literally the sensation they have. And it's, you know, it's true. No sensation, no symptom is crazy enough. Everything is relatable in Lyme. Babesia can also bring some states of depression and anxiety with the fear dominant. So I had Babesia, and like I said, I've been hang gliding for 15 years. I know how to master my fear, and this was beyond my control, like this kind of intense fear for small stuff. Babesia also brings some déjà vu. It's like you're in this situation and you're like, oh, been here before. A lot of déjà vu. I had a lot of these. Babesia can bring tinnitus, so ringing in the ears, which can be very annoying. A loss of appetite, some nausea, some vomiting, also some cold, painful, and numb extremities, so hands and feet. That can look like a Raynaud syndrome. It's a circulation thing. Okay, so that's the main symptoms of Babesia. And then Bartonella is another bacteria. Uh, Bartonella is classically called cat scratch disease because it can be transmitted by a scratch of a cat. But in this case, it's transmitted by a tick. Some studies are saying, oh, it's unclear that a tick can transmit Bartonella to a human, um, but it's in there because with Lyme, we can measure the Bartonella titers. So Bartonella is classical for migrating joint and muscle pain. One day it's the shoulder, the other day it's the knee, it's the elbow, you know. Oh, I've got, sometimes I have people saying, oh, my knee is killing me, and then the next day they're fine and they're like, what is this? So that migrating pain is a classical sign of Bartonella. Pain under your feet. I had a lot of that. I would get up in the morning and be like, ow, my feet would be painful. Stretch marks on skin. Bartonella likes to hang around the blood vessels, especially the capillaries, and cause some vasculitis, so inflammation of the blood vessels. And so on the skin, it causes some stretch marks. It can also cause some sensation of burning sensation on the skin that makes it difficult and painful to even wear clothes or under the sun. I had that. I was under the sun for not very long, and I was like, as if somebody was holding, like a magnifying glass uh, on my skin, and it was like burning me. And I was like, wow, what is that? That's Bartonella. Bartonella can create headaches, fatigue, neck pain, and stiffness. This is a hallmark sign of Bartonella. Can cause fever, conjunctivitis, so the white of your eye becoming red, a little bit like as if you had allergies and kind of scratch your eye. Can cause some swollen lymph nodes, so some bumps in the neck or under your armpit or in your groin or other places. It can cause some anxiety, some panic, and irritability, which is what I had when I had some almost panic attacks. Another classical sign of Bartonella is a urinary frequency. So it's almost like a urine infection. Like you go pee often, not much comes out. It can burn, but the burning can be more internal. So Bartonella, what it likes to go into the bladder wall and create what's called an interstitial cystitis. So it's causing inflammation in the bladder wall. So the bladder becomes irritable and it kind of wants to contract itself to get rid of the pathogen, but unfortunately it's stuck in the bladder wall. I had a client that I coached for Lyme disease 2 or 3 years ago, and she was literally unable to go anywhere, to the shopping mall or to visit anybody because she had to pee all the time, like every 15 minutes or something like that. And it was really debilitating for her because she literally could not go anywhere. And when she followed the protocol and treated for Bartonella, she was able to go from like peeing, I think it was like 16 times during a 12-hour period to like 8 times. So she was able to go into the car to visit a friend of hers who lives 2 hours away without having to stop for peeing. So she was like, way! It was a big thing for her. Bartonella can also cause some sore throat that can be intermittent, and also cause some gastric symptoms like gastritis, nausea, reflux, and decrease the appetite. So this is, again, I can send you this document that you can share with anybody, but this is the global picture of somebody in the phase 2, mostly phase 3, when they have symptoms in all of their systems like this. And I'm not talking about, one thing here and there that you'd be like, oh, I've got Lyme because I've got some, deja vu or got Babesia. You really have to take it in consideration in the global picture, which is what is currently not available in the medical system. to have somebody to sit with someone. So when I coach people and we explore their situation, I take at least 2 hours in to really go around the whole clinical picture of the chronology of their symptoms and what's been happening and their risk factors and all of that. Okay. So that was challenge number one. Challenge number two is Lyme is like a marathon because the body is under attack from multiple bacteria, parasite, viruses for an extended period of time in phases 2 and 3. So the body just becomes exhausted. So Lyme is like a marathon because it's a medical marathon for the diagnosis and treatment for sure. And it's also a marathon because Lyme creates a complex chronic infection syndrome. Okay, it creates an imbalance in the immune system. So the immune system becomes like so overwhelmed because it's got pathogens, microbes to eradicate everywhere. It's trying to put out fires here and there, and it's getting really tired. Sometimes when I tell people is to pay attention to their symptoms. What you've seen in the Borrelia, Babesia, Bartonella, these symptoms are the indicator of the activity of the immune system. So it tells the person where is the immune system most active or most actively fighting. That tells you which co-infection is most active at this moment. So unfortunately, sometimes the immune systems becomes overactive in one area and underactive in some other areas. Okay, so it creates an imbalance and a dysfunction in that way. It can create some cardiac dysfunction with cardiac arrhythmias and also cardiac inflammation in the kind of the cardiac wall or the membrane that surrounds the heart. Can create neurological dysfunction. Some people have, numbness or problems with their vision and coordination, and they're like, what is going on? Gastrointestinal dysfunction, so digestive issues, can't digest, loss of appetite. It can cause hormonal dysfunction. Hormonal dysfunction, anything from your thyroid to your reproductive hormones. Like, for me, when I was 36 years old and my periods were every 70 days, I was in reproductive age when I got the disease. But, think about it, when the body is under so much attack, the last thing it wants to do is to reproduce itself, right? So, and because the hormones are being all kind of kicked out of balance. It creates muscle and joint dysfunction. Some of it is caused by the inflammation that is going on with this fight that the immune system is putting on. Some of it is also the pathogens literally going into hiding into the muscles, into the joints. And everybody who has some form of chronic illness, and Lyme included, has some form of mitochondrial dysfunction. And that's not me who says that, it's the Lyme experts. All right, so mitochondria, quick crash course about them. I love our mitochondria. So each cell in your body has a nucleus and multiple little things here, but each cell has multiple mitochondria in them. And these mitochondria, they look like jelly beans, and they are their own entity, and they generate the energy for your body to function. So let's say, you contract your muscle, you need some energy for this muscle to activate itself, and this energy is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So it's your mitochondria who uses your nutrients and the oxygen to put out some ATP for you to have oxygen. And the problem with Lyme and a lot of chronic diseases is all the inflammation that's been caused and the damage to the mitochondria from the toxins and the inflammation makes the mitochondria unable to perform their functions. And so this is really, really important to address. And I'll show you in the upcoming slides when we talk about recovery. So the Lyme marathon is also for the treatment marathon. Because Lyme goes everywhere in the body, you have to address it kind of everywhere. I don't know if you can see here on the slide, but the main pathogen, Borrelia burgdorferi, has four major forms. This is the spirochete, so it's kind of corkscrew form. And then it can go into a cyst. And when it goes into a cyst, it's a first step of protecting itself from the immune system. It can go into what's called blebs or round bodies, which are kind of membrane-less organisms that can seep through tissues, kind of swim through tissues. And when I think about the spontaneous pneumothorax that I had, the lung that collapsed, one of the causes of that are blebs between the lung and the ribs, in the pleura space. And so I'm highly suspicious that I've had some of these blebs go into the pleural space and then create this lung collapse. And the other form is a biofilm. So this is literally multiple microorganisms that are building a fortress with a bunch of debris and tissues and things, so that they're really, really protected, from the immune system. So immune cells can be passing by and they don't see any of it because it's so protected into the biofilm. And the problem with biofilms is every once in a while they'll burst and they'll spew out some new microorganisms in the body, and the body will think this is a new infection, and it'll go again into like all these symptoms, and so it makes it chronic, so the immune system never really has a break. So the treatment challenge with that is you have to address all the forms of Borrelia on top of addressing all the co-infections. So here is Babesia, and you see these are red blood cells that are seen under a microscope with some contrast agent, and you see all these little kind of purple dots in the red blood cells. These are the Babesia parasites in the red blood cells. So when a red blood cell is inhabited by a parasite, it becomes ineffective and it just wants to commit suicide. Okay. So it decreases the oxygen capacity of the blood for the person. And that's one of the reasons also why the heart has to accelerate to circulate quicker the red blood cells that still have proper oxygen carrying function. And then this is Bartonella, where you see the classical stretch mark. This is the lower back. So it's oftentimes in the lower back, or it can be on the abdomen or on the upper thighs. That's where you'll find them most often. Also, with this marathon is you have to address all 5 pillars that I'm going to show you into the next slide. What I've seen people with Lyme do, and sometimes they didn't know it was Lyme, but they've been going on for years, trying to help themselves. And oftentimes they'll do a little bit of this or a little bit of that. And it really never completely works until you do all of it at the same time. So for people who've been doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little bit of this, it ends up taking so long and being much more expensive and losing years of quality of life. Okay, so I had one of my first clients that I've helped on his path to recovery from Lyme was 63 years old, and he had been sick for 3 or 4 years, and he was having rib pain and trouble breathing and digestive issues. He was having diarrhea. He was having a lot of pain in his back. He needed to take narcotics for it. And his doctor just didn't know what he had. And when he called me, he was like, "Catherine, you're my last hope. I don't want to live my life like this." And so he started to integrate all the 5 pillars of the protocol. And within 3 weeks, he started to make sense again, because he was mixing words like crazy. He was really hard to understand. So he was making sense. He was regaining his focus and his concentration, his clarity, and also his digestive issues had normalized after 2 weeks, even 2 or 3 weeks. After 5 weeks, he no longer had the rib pain, no longer had the air hunger, and he was regaining energy like crazy. So he was starting to work on the project of patio that he had started 2 years before, and chopping some wood for the winter and all that. And after 7 weeks, he was pain free and he was able to ditch all of his narcotics. And he was like, wow. He said to me at the end of our program together, which is 12 weeks, he said, I'm a new man. I completely feel like I'm resuscitated, you know? Um, so it's because he was able to integrate all the 5 pillars, and that I will show you here. So this is the challenge number 3, where to start. So if you or somebody you know has been sick for a long time, it's hard to know where to start, who to trust, and where to invest your resources, because Lyme is not a cheap illness, and I know it. The key is education, education, education. And the fact that you are here learning about this with me tonight gives you such a head start and an advance on this. And congratulations for learning this. A lot of people who've taken this talk that I'm giving to you tonight, who have been talking to their doctor, and they came back to me and they said, Catherine, I knew more than my doctor thanks to your talk. And I was able to get forward with some proper treatment. So mission accomplished for me when I hear that. If somebody has been sick for a long time and they don't know yet if it's Lyme, I always guide them to go to the questionnaire, the Lyme questionnaire from Dr. Horowitz. So you just Google that. Dr. Horowitz, who's a doctor who's practicing in New Jersey. He did his medical school in Belgium, I believe. And this questionnaire has been validated by 2 universities, one in Europe and one in the US, as being more valid than the blood test to predict the probability that a person is dealing with Lyme disease. So if anybody has a score above 46 on that questionnaire, it's a high probability that they're dealing with Lyme disease. Find somebody who is Lyme literate, a health professional, whether it's a doctor, a natural practitioner, you know, like, or a health coach like me who's been having some expertise in that. But you really need to know, you really need to have somebody who knows what they're doing with Lyme. I always tell people to take charge of your healing path and become your own expert. You know, you're the one who lives in your body 24/7. You're the one who knows best. And I tell people, don't let yourself be intimidated by healthcare professionals, because they are there to accompany you, but become your own expert. Be aware of how you feel when you eat certain things, or you go into certain situations, so that you become you gather all of this data, and then yourself better. And here are the 5 pillars of a successful treatment path. So pillar number 1 is to have some antimicrobials. So it could be medicinal plants like I've chosen, and or antibiotics. So both can be taken together. There are 2 schools of thoughts. Some Lyme experts say do most of the job with with medicinal plants. So you kind of safeguard your kidneys and your liver. And then at the end, if you need, you kind of give it the last punch with antibiotics. Or some other people say, well, start antibiotics, and if your body can't take it anymore, then continue with medicinal plants. So it really is what the person wants and believe will help them. Most of the people who come to me, they want an alternative solution to antibiotics. They want something that is more natural, medicinal plants that is more safe, and that can be taken in the long run. So that's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is daily detoxing from the toxins of the pathogens that are dying, from heavy metals, parasites, mold toxins. And I go into that into more details into the online course that I've created. But a daily detox is important. The 3rd pillar is regulating and supporting the immune system. So it's called immunomodulating. So where the immune system has been hyperactive, you just kind of say, chill out a bit. And where it's been underactive, you say, okay, we need your help here. Okay. And there's some um, supplements and molecules that will do that, but also some lifestyle habits and food. The fourth pillar is reducing the inflammatory cytokine cascade. So when the immune system is throwing a fight, it's doing everything it can to kill the bad guys, but unfortunately, it kills the good guys too because it throws out some inflammation in there. It's almost like the napalm that was thrown in the Vietnam War, that it was burning everything. Unfortunately, the good guys and the bad guys, not that there was good or bad guys, but that's just kind of the analogy of the immune system kind of trying to burn it all, but hurting you in the way. So we want to reduce that inflammation cascade and not throwing so many cytokines. And the fifth pillar is to support adrenals and mitochondria. Like I was telling you, the mitochondria are little jelly beans in your cells. Most of them are contained in the muscles and in the liver. And they produce your energy, your ATP. Your adrenals are, you got two kidneys, and they have a little they have a little hat on top of them, and these little hats are called adrenals, and they secrete adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol, and these are all like the hormones that give you the oomph, give you the daily energy you need to function and to have, it's like the good stress. So you absolutely want to support these. Most people who are sick for a long time happen to have flat, exhausted adrenals. That's called adrenal fatigue, and there's different stages. When I was sick, I tested my adrenals. It's a cortisol saliva test that you can do with somebody who was a functional medicine practitioner. And there's 4 grades of adrenal fatigue, the fourth one being like, flat out. And I was in grade 4. And I was still working as a nurse practitioner back then. And my natural practitioner, the one who ordered the test for me, she said, I don't know how you can work with your adrenals being so flat. I said, guess what? I don't know either. But I was really flat out. So you absolutely want to support the adrenals. So all 5 pillars are supported by the right supplements, by foods in the diet, by also lifestyle and mindset changes. And this is where it becomes really important to know what to do. So in the challenge number 3, where to continue. So we have looked at where to start and where to continue. If somebody has been sick for a long time, and this is kind of my specialty for someone who's been struggling for a long time, there are some essential lifestyle and mindset habit changes. First of all, you need a proper clean nutrition, which means no gluten, no dairy, and no sugar, because all 3 things cause inflammation. So in the research, the diet that has the 2 diets that have the most success with Lyme are the paleo diet and the ketogenic diet. So it's mainly good lean protein, meats, good fats, lots of green veggies, lots of kind of rainbow veggies, nuts and seeds, but very few sugar, no processed foods. And so that is really key. So for some people, it's really difficult because some people have been eating really bad for a long time. So for them, it's a big change. So that's where coaching becomes really interesting to help them integrate into their habits slowly, or as fast as possible, I should say. Adequate sleep is so important. Sleep helps. So while we sleep, there's so much stuff that happens. We repair our tissues and we rejuvenate ourselves, our energy. But there's also that's also a time when the bugs are being killed, in the body. For people who are affected by Lyme, and anybody really, but going to bed before 10 o'clock is key. I can't stress that enough. Even for myself, when I was sick, if I would go beyond 10, the next day was so much more harder. When I was sticking to going to bed at 10, it's like, wow, okay, I can do this. It really makes a big difference. Okay, so having adequate sleep, and even if needed, a nap in the afternoon, because around 3 or 4 o'clock, that's where there's a dip in cortisol, and that's where the immune system becomes more active to fight the bugs of the day. And your immune system is actually the system in the body that requires the most energy. Think about it like your dryer. When the dryer is probably the utility in your house that requires the most electricity. When you start the dryer, I know at my house the lights go like this, ooh, because it's drawing so much power. Your immune system is like that too. It's the system that draws the most power from your body. That's why when you're sick, you feel tired and you want to sleep. So oftentimes I tell people, don't be afraid to take a nap in the afternoon around 3 or 4 o'clock. That's where you have a natural dip in cortisol. That's where your immune system is wanting to be active to kill some bugs. Okay. You want to remove toxins. So eating clean, meaning organic foods, so that you're not importing pesticides and chemicals and herbicides, but also removing toxins. We talk about heavy metals, mold. And like I said, I talk about this more in details in the course that I offer. But that is really important, uh, because heavy metals, especially, can hide into the Lyme pathogens, and it can hide into the parasites. So when you get rid of all these things and get rid of parasites, like you get rid of a double whammy. It's awesome. Electromagnetic fields are anything that is caused, like cell phone towers and microwaves and big power lines. All of these things, we live in a world, unfortunately, that have the most electromagnetic fields that human beings have ever encountered. And the problem with EMFs is that when the pathogens, so the bacteria and the viruses and the parasites, when they're in presence of EMFs, they feel like it's a threat to them, and they start reproducing faster and they become more aggressive. So anybody who's sick, I mean, it's good for anybody, but especially for somebody who's sick, you want to turn off the Wi-Fi at night. And if possible, not have Wi-Fi at all, have cable internet, plug in into your computer. Um, your cell phone, if you don't use it, it's recommended to put it in airplane mode and then shut it down. And why airplane mode is because if you don't put it in airplane mode before you shut it down, it'll still search for a network, so that when you turn it back on, it's ready to go. Okay. So it's things like that make a big difference for people who are sick with Lyme. Exercising, you want to exercise just enough and not too much. The key is, if the next day you're feeling tired, you've done too much the day before. Okay, so these are kind of essential lifestyle habit changes. And then there's essential mindset habit changes. And I can't tell you how important that is. The body responds to the mind. If somebody is saying, I'm so tired, I'm so tired, the body and all the cells, they hear your thoughts. I know that sounds weird for some people, but they really do hear your thoughts and your words, and they apply that. And I've seen that so often by coaching somebody to just change their words, change their communication, change their state, and then boom, they have energy. I had a client who, she was using a walker, and she was close to the wheelchair when she came to me for coaching, and she was starting to feel better and to walk. But then anytime she would talk about the illness, it's like all of a sudden both of her legs felt heavy and lack of coordination, and she needed the walker, and she was having a hard time walking just from talking about the illness. It's like her body was getting the vibe of sickness, and she was like, this is so weird. And then it would reverse as she was talking about more of her healing and what she wanted. So I've seen that so often, and this is how I've experienced a fast healing also, with doing proper stress management. With Lyme, you can no longer be stressed the way you were throughout your life. And this means your job, your life situation, your finances, your relationships. Um, I had a client who, she was kind of the maid of everybody. She was doing dishes and dinner, and nobody was appreciating her. And she felt like, the carpet when you enter the house and everybody wiped their shoes on there. That's how she felt. And so there was a part of her that really wanted to heal, but there was another part of her that did not want to heal, that was in her subconscious. Because if she was going to heal, that meant that she was going to go back to a life that made her sick in the beginning. It's like because she hadn't learned how to say no and how to set proper boundaries in her life, that the illness was serving as a certain boundary. But when she learned how to set healthy boundaries and how to tell the people in her life, no, you cook your own dinner and you help with dishes. I'm not your servant here. I'm not your maid. It's almost like the illness became obsolete because now she was able to set healthy boundaries in her life, and her healing accelerated, or her recovery to health accelerated. So paying attention to how stress and emotions play a role. I have people tell me all the time when they're stressed out, when they're feeling negative emotion like shame or guilt or fear or sadness, they have more symptoms. So the body speaks to you from the emotions that you're feeling. I tell people also to pay attention to their language. And this is something that I'm really passionate about because, like I said, the body hears everything. And so when somebody talks about their illness and they say, my Lyme disease or my cancer or my diabetes, there's a notion of possession. It's mine. And when you have something, subconsciously, you don't like to lose anything that you possess, right? You don't like losing your keys or your time or your money. And so when there's an appropriate, like a possession, my Lyme disease, the subconscious will think in ways that it won't want to let go of it because it doesn't want to let go of something it possesses. Okay, so I tell people to speak about it as the illness that's affecting my body right now instead of my whatever illness it is. Also, I hear a lot of people in the Lyme disease world self-identifying with the illness. They say, oh, I'm a Lyme, I'm a Lyme wire. So whenever we identify with something, our identity is some of the deepest things that our subconscious wants to protect. So if somebody has the identity of the Lyme or the Lyme warrior, deep down, the subconscious will not want to heal. So pay attention to the language to de-identify, not identify with the illness. Okay, that's super key. That's so important. And also harmonizing inner conflicts. I see people all the time, like my client I was telling you, who have this inner conflict. They want to heal, they want to get their life back. And part of them is afraid that if they heal, they're just going to go back to a job that makes them miserable, or to a relationship that where they're not being heard and seen and appreciated. So part of them will not allow them to heal because they have this inner conflict. The problem with inner conflicts is that there's a lot of energy that is stuck in the inner conflict. So what we do in coaching is we dissolve that inner conflict. And so the energy that was stuck there now becomes available to heal, if that makes sense. So if you know someone who's been suffering from Lyme, I have, my goal is really to inspire and guide this person to regain their energy, their health, and their vitality in a sustainable, in a natural, and a durable way. And using a powerful research-based protocol and a high-level neuroscience-based coaching. And together, this is the synergy that really accelerates results. As a health professional who's been there, I truly believe that any adversity is an opportunity to heal many deeper things beyond the physical body in order to live life to someone's full potential. Okay, so when I work with my clients, I really help them find the gift of this event, the gift of Lyme, even though when they're in it, it doesn't seem like there's a gift because it stinks and it's ugly and we don't like it. But truly, for me, the gift of Lyme was showing me where I was not living in integrity, in alignment with who I was. And it forced me to reevaluate my life and to quit my nurse practitioner job because I was no longer in alignment with the medical paradigm, and to let go of a relationship that was no longer serving me. And I made some pretty big changes in my life, but do I regret it? Hell no. Okay, so And that's what I do with my clients. I want to help people save time, money, and health through this combination of powerful research-based protocol and the high-level coaching. So if you know somebody, I have some links for a coaching discovery session where we really look at where the person is at, what the symptoms they have. If they're not clear if it's Lyme, we help them clarify that, and we explore what's been stopping them or slowing them down in their recovery to health. We create a powerful vision for what their health, their life over Lyme looks like, and a step-by-step kind of plan to move them forward. Okay, so that's in a discovery session. I also been telling you about an online course that I've been doing, and I constantly update the course, but it's on a platform where you have lifetime access to over 12 hours of videos, and it's 4 module. And somebody who's been sick for a while actually just purchased the course, and she said to me, "Oh my gosh, Catherine, just the module one is worth more than the investment." Because in the module one, I go in depth through the protocol and the molecules that are fighting which infection and why they're important so that you know what you're dealing with. So I'm literally saving you hours and hours of research, of time and money. So this course is normally worth $500 Canadian, and I have a coupon here that gives you $300 off. So it's really an amazing offer, and you have a lifetime access to this. You can ask questions on the portal, and I answer within usually 24 to max 72 hours if I'm traveling. But I've had people take this course and implement the things that I've been teaching and come back to me months later and say, "Thank you so much. Nobody knew what to do with me, and now I'm on a full path to recovery." It's been amazing to see that. So this is the link if you want to check it out, or if you have a smartphone, you can use the camera function and just point it at your screen and it'll take you right onto the page. So thank you for your attention. I know this was a lot of information. I want to leave you with this moment. It was a decisive moment of when I decided to get involved to help people with Lyme disease. And this was a very emotional moment. It was July 2017. So I was about 5 months into my protocol. So I was starting to feel much better, and I had just started to fly hang gliders again. And every year we go to Mont Saint Pierre on the eastern Quebec. And it's like a pilgrim every year. We fly over the St. Lawrence River, and it's really the ocean at that point. And we have the Chic-Choc Mountains in the back, and it's just magnificent. It's magical there. And so there I was. I had just launched my hang glider, and I was flying, seeing the sun reflecting on the ocean, and smelling, the smell of the forest, the pine trees below me. And I had some friends in the air with me, and I was like, wow. And I was literally crying in the air, being so grateful for having recovered my muscles and my energy. And I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I still have goosebumps just thinking about it. And that's when I heard the voice from the universe that said, "Catherine, now that you're experiencing this amazing recovery, you got to help other people do the same." And I remember vividly, I was in my hang glider, face in the wind, and I was like, all right, whoever is talking to me, God, the universe, my intuition, okay, I will help people with Lyme disease. And so this is why I do what I do. And it's such a dear thing into my heart. And please, please, if you've been suffering for a long time, know that there is hope, that perhaps you might not have tried everything. And if I can help you, it'd be my pleasure to help you. And if you know somebody who needs that help, just please forward this information to them. It might mean life or death to them. Last week, I know of a friend of mine, one of her friend who's got Lyme committed suicide because she was tired of suffering from Lyme. And so I absolutely don't want that to happen, because there are solutions and there are hope. So thank you for your attention. These are my website, Facebook, and email address if you would like to be in contact with me. And I will send you the recording for this, so you will see all of the slides. And here are some useful resources that you can find online for the American and Canadian associations. And here are some of the references that I have used and the book reference. So thank you so much. And I am available for your questions if you have some for me.